The crystal chandeliers of the Meridian Grand cast golden light across polished marble floors as Richard Blackstone adjusts his platinum cufflinks, surveying the sea of tailored suits before him. At 50, the real estate mogul carries himself with the confidence of a man who has never heard the word no spoken seriously. His steel-gray hair is perfectly styled, his smile practiced to perfection for the cameras, capturing every moment of what he considers his coronation, the unveiling of a $2 billion development project that will reshape the city's skyline. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard's voice booms across the hotel's grand ballroom. Today marks the beginning of a new era. Blackstone Empire doesn't just build buildings. We build legacies. The crowd of 300 investors, city officials, and media representatives responds with polite applause. Richard basks in it, his chest swelling with familiar pride. Among the sea of faces, Maya Johnson stands quietly near the back, her simple black blazer a stark contrast to the designer gowns and $1,000 suits surrounding her. At 35, she possesses the kind of understated elegance that money can't buy. Intelligent dark eyes that miss nothing, posture that speaks of quiet confidence rather than desperate ambition. She listens intently as Richard outlines his vision, occasionally jotting notes in a small leather notebook. As the presentation concludes and the crowd begins to mingle, Maya makes her way toward the front of the room. She weaves through clusters of animated conversations about profit margins and market projections, her movements deliberate and unhurried. When she reaches the small stage where Richard stands surrounded by admirers, she waits patiently for a lull in conversation before extending her hand with a warm smile. Mr. Blackstone, thank you for an enlightening presentation. I'd love to discuss some potential opportunities. Richard's eyes sweep her from head to toe in less than 2 seconds, his expression shifting from practiced charm to barely concealed disdain. He takes a visible step backward, leaving Maya's hand hanging in the air between them. The conversations around them begin to fade as people sense the tension building. I don't shake hands with staff, Richard announces loudly enough for nearby investors to hear clearly. His voice carries the casual cruelty of someone who believes his wealth shields him from consequences. Which way is the service entrance? You seem to have gotten lost. A hush falls over the immediate area. Maya's hand drops slowly to her side, but her expression remains composed. I'm not staff, Mr. Blackstone. I'm here as an investor. Richard's laugh is sharp and cutting. An investor? He turns to the small audience that is gathered, seeking validation for his performance. Tell me, sweetheart, how much are you looking to invest? $50? Maybe $100 if you break into your grocery money? The crowd shifts uncomfortably. Some chuckle nervously, others look away. Maya reaches into her jacket pocket and withdraws a matte black card, placing it gently on the table beside Richard's presentation materials. The movement is so subtle that only a few people notice it, but those who do, particularly 3 older investors standing near the front, suddenly straighten their postures, their eyes widening in recognition. Perhaps, Maya says quietly, her voice carrying a strength that makes several people lean closer to hear. You should review your guest list more carefully, Mr. Blackstone. The modest apartment on East 47th Street tells a different story than the one Richard Blackstone imagined. Maya sits at a small wooden table, steam rising from 2 cups of chamomile tea as her grandmother, Sarah Johnson, settles into the chair across from her. At 75, Sarah moves with the careful grace of someone who has learned to treasure each day, her silver hair neatly braided, her dark eyes still sharp with the intelligence that helped her shape young minds for 40 years in the city's public schools. Tell me about today, baby girl, Sarah says, her voice carrying the warmth of someone who has weathered many storms and learned to find calm in their aftermath. The apartment around them speaks of a life lived with intention rather than abundance. Books line every available wall. Family photographs in mismatched frames tell stories of graduations and celebrations. And everything is clean, organized, and loved. Maya stirs honey into her tea, watching the golden swirls dissolve. Another day, another lesson in how the world sees us, Grandma. She doesn't elaborate immediately, But Sarah has raised this child since she was 7 years old, when a drunk driver took both her parents on a rainy Tuesday evening. She knows when Maya is processing something significant. The silence between them is comfortable, filled with the kind of understanding that comes from shared history. Maya's life has been a masterclass in exceeding expectations while being constantly underestimated. Valedictorian at State University with a double major in finance and economics, MBA from Wharton with highest honors. And still, she takes the bus to work each morning at Griffin & Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm where she analyzes market trends and writes reports that make other people rich. You know what your grandfather used to tell me during the worst days of the civil rights movement? Sarah asks, reaching across the table to touch Maya's hand. He'd say, "Sarah, a tree that's gonna reach the sky doesn't waste energy explaining itself to every dog that barks at its roots." Maya smiles for the first time since returning home. Grandpa always had a way with words. She reaches for the worn leather purse sitting on the counter behind her. Sarah's purse, passed down like a family heirloom. Inside, tucked between grocery coupons and reading glasses, sits a small notebook bound in cracked leather. Maya runs her fingers over its surface, feeling the indentations of years of careful notes. The notebook contains more than grocery lists and appointment reminders. Its pages hold account numbers, investment tracking codes, and contact information that would surprise anyone who assumed Maya Johnson was just another struggling professional trying to make ends meet. At the bottom of the most recent page, written in Sarah's careful script, are 4 words that Maya has read countless times. Wait for the right moment. "How much longer do I have to wait, Grandma?" Maya asks, her voice barely above a whisper. She spent 3 years in this role. 3 years of letting people assume she's ordinary. 3 years of careful observation and quiet preparation. Sarah's eyes twinkle with a mixture of wisdom and mischief. "Baby, some people spend their whole lives waiting for the right moment. But you?" She taps the notebook with one gnarled finger. "You'll know it when it arrives. And when it does, you won't need to ask me or anyone else. You'll just act." The phone rings, interrupting their moment. Maya glances at the caller ID. A number she doesn't recognize with a 202 area code. She lets it go to voicemail, but Sarah notices the slight tension in her granddaughter's shoulders. "Another one of those calls?" Sarah asks. Maya nods. For months now, she's been receiving calls from various numbers, always with the same message when she finally answers. Requests for status updates, gentle inquiries about timing, questions that confirm what the notebook has told her all along. She's not who people think she is, and someday soon that truth will matter more than anyone realizes. "The right moment," Maya repeats, closing the notebook and tucking it safely back into Sarah's purse. "I just hope I'm ready when it comes." The humiliation at the Meridian Grand spreads through the financial district like wildfire in drought season. Richard Blackstone doesn't just let sleeping dogs lie. He kicks them until they howl, then tells everyone within earshot that he's the victim of their noise. By 9 a.m. the following morning, he's already made 3 phone calls, each one designed to ensure that Maya Johnson learns her place in his version of the natural order. The first call goes to Mark Griffin, CEO of Griffin & Associates, and a man who has spent 30 years building his consulting firm's reputation one cautious decision at a time. Griffin sits behind his mahogany desk, his coffee growing cold as Richard's voice fills his office through the speakerphone. "Mark, we need to discuss one of your employees," Richard begins without preamble. "Maya Johnson. She disrupted my investor presentation yesterday, making wild claims about being an investor herself. Frankly, I question the judgment of any firm that would hire someone so delusional." Griffin's stomach tightens. Maya is one of his most reliable analysts, consistently delivering insights that help his clients make profitable decisions. But Richard Blackstone represents potential contracts worth millions, and Griffin has a payroll to meet, a mortgage on the office building, and a reputation to protect. "I'll handle this immediately, Richard. You have my word." When Maya arrives at work that morning, taking her usual seat at the small desk near the window where natural light helps her review financial reports, Griffin's assistant appears within minutes. "Mr. Ponser, Griffin wants to see you in his office. Right away." The conversation is brief and devastating. Griffin, unable to meet Maya's eyes directly, explains that several clients have expressed concerns about her professionalism. He uses words like reassignment and temporary measures and company image, but Maya hears what he's really saying. Richard Blackstone made a phone call, and Griffin is too frightened to stand up for an employee against a potential client. So you're suspending me because a racist couldn't handle a black woman in the same room as his precious investors? Maya's voice remains steady, but Griffin flinches as if she'd shouted. It's not about race, Maya. It's about maintaining professional relationships that benefit everyone here. Maya stands, gathering her few personal items from Griffin's office. No, Mark. It's about choosing which side of history you want to be on when people look back at moments like this. She pauses at the door. I hope the money you think you'll make from Richard Blackstone helps you sleep at night. But Richard isn't finished. His second call goes to Stephen Morrison, CEO of Morrison & Associates, where Maya had been considering a position. Stephen, I need to give you a heads up about someone who might be interviewing with your firm. By lunch, Maya discovers that her scheduled interview has been mysteriously canceled due to budget constraints. The third call is the cruelest. Richard has done his research, discovering through his network that Maya's grandmother is currently receiving treatment for a heart condition at Metropolitan General Hospital. He doesn't call the hospital directly. That would be too obvious. Instead, he contacts a friend who sits on the hospital's board of directors. Jerry, I'm looking to make a charitable donation to Metropolitan General, specifically to help cover costs for patients who can't afford proper care. There's an elderly woman there, Sarah Johnson, whose granddaughter has been causing problems for my business. I'd like to help with her medical bills, but I need to ensure the granddaughter understands the generous nature of this gift. The message reaches Maya through Dr. Patricia Williams, Sarah's cardiologist, who calls with what she believes is wonderful news. Miss Johnson, I have a patient advocate here who says, an anonymous donor wants to cover all of your grandmother's medical expenses. The only requirement is that you sign a statement acknowledging the donor's generosity and agreeing to make a public statement about their kindness. Maya sits in the hospital waiting room, holding the papers that would solve her family's financial crisis. All she has to do is sign her name to a document praising Richard Blackstone's charity, record a video apologizing for her unprofessional behavior at the Meridian Grand, and admit that she overstepped her bounds as someone who didn't belong in such prestigious company. Sarah, despite her weakened condition, takes one look at the papers and pushes them away. Baby, I've been poor before, and I've been sick before, but I've never been owned, and I'm not starting now. Grandma, this could save your life and cost you your soul. Sarah's voice carries the authority of someone who watched her husband march with Dr. King, who taught school when black teachers were paid half what white teachers earned, who raised a granddaughter to believe that dignity matters more than comfort. Some prices are too high to pay, even for life itself. Maya tears up the papers. Within hours, Richard's fury manifests in a systematic campaign. He calls clients, colleagues, and competitors, painting Maya as unstable, aggressive, and unsuitable for professional environments. He doesn't always mention her race directly. He's too clever for that. But his choice of words creates the desired impression among people predisposed to believe that successful black women must be somehow deficient or dangerous. David Chen, a quiet investor who witnessed the original confrontation, watches this campaign with growing unease. Ana Rodriguez, the young reporter who covered the Meridian Grand event, finds her editor suddenly reluctant to run her story about what really happened. Thomas Wright, a prominent civil rights attorney, receives calls from colleagues warning him that getting involved might damage his own standing in the legal community. The message is clear. Richard Blackstone doesn't just defeat his enemies, he erases them. And Maya Johnson is about to learn that in his world, there are consequences for forgetting your place. By Friday afternoon, Maya sits in her grandmother's hospital room, officially unemployed, blacklisted from the industry she's worked in for over a decade, and watching the strongest woman she's ever known fight for each breath. The notebook in Sarah's old purse feels heavier now, its secrets more significant. Maya pulls out her phone and scrolls to a contact labeled simply EH. Her finger hovers over the call button as she watches Sarah sleep, monitors beeping steadily in the background. Not yet, she whispers to herself, echoing the words she's repeated for 3 years. But for the first time, she wonders if not yet is becoming too late. Maya stands in the shower of her small apartment, letting hot water wash away 3 days of sleepless nights and frustrated tears. It's Monday morning, exactly 1 week since the Meridian Grand humiliation, and Richard Blackstone is about to hold his biggest investor presentation of the year. The Blackstone Future Vision event at the Grand Convention Center promises to attract every major player in real estate development, with Richard seeking $4 billion in backing for his next phase of expansion. Maya has watched the livestream preview 3 times. Richard stands before architectural renderings of gleaming towers, his voice filled with the confidence of a man who believes he has successfully eliminated his only threat. He doesn't know that Maya spent the weekend making calls of her own, not to beg for mercy or seek sympathy, but to activate a network that has been waiting patiently for exactly this moment. The call to EH finally happened Sunday evening. Elizabeth von Habsburg, Director of North American Operations for Sovereign Wealth Partners, answered on the first ring with her crisp Austrian accent. Maya, darling, 3 years is a long time to maintain a cover identity. Are you finally ready to come home? Elizabeth arrived this morning on a private jet, bringing with her 2 associates and a briefcase full of documents that will transform Maya Johnson from unemployed analyst to the most powerful person in Richard Blackstone's immediate future. But first, Maya has a promise to keep. She sits beside Sarah's hospital bed, holding her grandmother's hand as morning sunlight streams through the window. Sarah's condition has stabilized, but the doctors warn that stress could be dangerous. Maya kisses her grandmother's forehead gently. "Grandma, do you remember what you told me about waiting for the right moment?" Sarah's eyes open, still sharp despite her physical weakness. "Baby, that moment doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It just arrives, quiet as morning, and suddenly you know." "I know," Maya whispers. "Today's the day." The Grand Convention Center buzzes with the energy of serious money changing hands. 500 of the most influential investors in North America fill the main auditorium, their combined net worth exceeding the GDP of small nations. Richard Blackstone commands the stage like a conductor before his orchestra, every gesture calculated to project strength and inevitability. Blackstone Future Vision isn't just about buildings, he declares, his voice carrying easily to the back rows. It's about reshaping how we think about urban development, about creating communities that reflect our values. The irony of his words isn't lost on Maya, who enters through the main doors precisely as Richard begins discussing inclusive growth and opportunity for all. This time, Maya doesn't come alone. Elizabeth von Habsburg moves beside her with the kind of confidence that comes from managing $12 billion in assets across 6 continents. Behind them, Dr. James Patterson, Sovereign Wealth's chief financial officer, carries himself with the quiet authority of someone who has advised 3 Nobel Prize winners and 2 sitting presidents. The third member of their group, Maria Santos, senior legal counsel, represents legal victories that have reshaped international finance law. The audience notices them immediately, not because they're loud or disruptive, but because they carry themselves with the unmistakable bearing of people who belong in rooms where fortunes are made and lost. Several investors in the front rows crane their necks to get a better look, whispering among themselves about the unexpected arrivals. Richard sees Maya and stops mid-sentence. His face cycles through confusion, annoyance, and something approaching panic before settling on manufactured disdain. "Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have some uninvited guests. Security, please escort Mr. Blackstone." Maya's voice cuts through his dismissal like a blade through silk. She doesn't shout, doesn't demand attention. She simply speaks with the quiet authority of someone who has every right to be exactly where she is. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about my credentials." The auditorium falls silent. Maya walks down the center aisle, her team following at a respectful distance. Every eye in the room tracks their movement as Richard's security team looks uncertainly between their boss and these composed professionals who clearly don't fit the profile of typical disruptors. Maya reaches the foot of the stage and looks up at Richard with the same calm expression she wore at the Meridian Grand. Would you prefer to handle this privately, or shall we discuss Sovereign Wealth Partners' position on your project publicly? The name hits the room like a lightning strike. Sovereign Wealth Partners isn't just any investment firm. It's the kind of organization that sovereign nations court, that makes and breaks entire markets with single decisions. Conversations erupt throughout the auditorium, as investors frantically Google the company name on their phones, confirming what the more informed among them already know. SWP manages more money than many countries produce in a year. Richard's mouth opens and closes without sound. Elizabeth steps forward, her voice carrying the crisp authority of someone accustomed to addressing heads of state. Mr. Blackstone, allow me to introduce Maya Johnson, Sovereign Wealth Partners Director of Strategic Investments for North America. She has been conducting a comprehensive 3-year evaluation of investment opportunities in this region. Your project has been under consideration for our $4 billion urban development initiative. The word has doesn't escape anyone's attention. Past tense. Opportunity missed. Maya opens her briefcase and withdraws a tablet, connecting it to the auditorium's projection system with the kind of casual expertise that suggests she's done this before. Numbers fill the screen. Account balances, investment portfolios, transaction histories that make Richard's $2 billion project look like a convenience store purchase. For the past 3 years, Maya begins, her voice carrying to every corner of the now silent auditorium. I have been living and working in this community under deep cover, evaluating not just the financial opportunities available, but the character of the people we might partner with. She clicks to the next slide, showing a detailed analysis of Richard's business practices, his company's financial health, and a comprehensive breakdown of every discriminatory hiring practice, every racist comment, every ethical corner cut in pursuit of profit. Sovereign Wealth Partners doesn't just invest money, Mr. Blackstone. We invest in values. We invest in futures. We invest in people who understand that true wealth isn't measured just in dollars, but in the dignity with which we treat every human being we encounter. Richard finally finds his voice, but it comes out as a croak. This is impossible. You can't be. You're just. Just what, Mr. Blackstone? Maya's question hangs in the air like a challenge. Just a black woman who couldn't possibly have the education, the connections, the authority to control more money than you've seen in your entire career? The room holds its breath. Richard looks around desperately, seeking support from an audience that is rapidly reassessing everything they thought they knew about the woman standing before them. Maya advances to her final slide. A single sentence in bold letters across the screen. Sovereign Wealth Partners withdraws from all consideration of partnerships with Blackstone Empire, effective immediately. The sound that escapes Richard Blackstone's throat isn't quite human. Richard Blackstone's world tilts on its axis as the reality of Maya's revelation sinks in. $4 billion, more money than he's handled in his entire career, was within his grasp, and his own prejudice just threw it away. But Richard didn't build an empire by accepting defeat gracefully. Like a cornered animal, he becomes most dangerous when he has nothing left to lose. "This is fraud," he shouts, his voice cracking with desperation as he points an accusatory finger at Maya. The polished businessman veneer crumbles, revealing the panicked bigot underneath. "You're all being deceived by an elaborate con. This woman is nothing but a failed analyst who got fired last week for unprofessional behavior." The audience shifts uncomfortably. Some investors begin to murmur among themselves, uncertainty flickering across their faces. Richard seizes on this moment of doubt, his confidence returning as he recognizes familiar ground, the art of manipulation. "Ladies and gentlemen, don't let yourselves be fooled by smoke and mirrors. I've done my research on Maya Johnson. She couldn't even hold down a job at a second-rate consulting firm." He gestures dramatically toward Maya, his voice gaining strength. "You're going to trust your investments to someone who lives in a rental apartment and takes the bus to work?" Maya stands perfectly still, letting Richard's words wash over her without reaction. Elizabeth von Habsburg, however, steps forward with the kind of smile that has made Fortune 500 CEOs nervous in boardrooms across 3 continents. Mr. Blackstone, would you like to verify Miss Johnson's authority with Sovereign Wealth Partners directly? Elizabeth produces her phone with theatrical precision. I have the managing director of our Zurich headquarters on speed dial. Or perhaps you'd prefer to see our authentication protocols. Maya finally speaks, her voice carrying a weight that makes everyone in the room lean forward. Mr. Blackstone, the easiest way to verify someone's credentials is to let them demonstrate their capabilities. She returns to her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Elizabeth, would you mind confirming our current liquid assets? The projection screen fills with a live banking interface from Sovereign Wealth Partners' primary account at Union Bank of Switzerland. The number displayed makes several people in the audience gasp audibly. $12,347,892,156.33. Would you like me to transfer $1 million to the Children's Hospital Foundation right now, Mr. Blackstone? Just to prove this isn't smoke and mirrors? Maya's finger hovers over the screen. Or would that be too much of a publicity stunt for your taste? Richard's face cycles through several shades of red before settling on an unhealthy purple. Anyone can fake a computer screen. This is all special effects. Hollywood nonsense. Dr. James Patterson, who has remained silent until now, removes his phone from his jacket pocket. Mr. Blackstone, you seem to doubt the authenticity of our organization. Would you like me to call Treasury Secretary Harrison? We advised her on the infrastructure bill last year. Or perhaps Federal Reserve Chairman Williams. We had lunch together last Tuesday. The crowd buzzes with renewed energy. Several investors are frantically typing on their phones, clearly researching Sovereign Wealth Partners and finding confirmation of everything they're witnessing. David Chen, the quiet investor who witnessed the original confrontation, stands and begins applauding slowly. Others join him, the sound building like thunder. Richard realizes he's losing control of his own event. In desperation, he plays his final card, the one that has always worked for him in the past when facing challenges from people he considers beneath him. Fine. Let's say you really work for this investment company. Richard's voice takes on the ugly tone of a man whose mask has finally slipped completely. But everybody here knows what this is really about. This is just another diversity hire trying to play in the big leagues. They probably gave you this job because you check all the right boxes for their political correctness. The auditorium falls deadly silent. Several people in the audience audibly gasp. Anna Rodriguez, who has been live streaming the entire event on her newspaper's social media channels, watches her viewer count spike past 100,000 as word spreads across the internet. Maya's expression doesn't change, but something shifts in the atmosphere around her. When she speaks, her voice carries the accumulated weight of every slight, every assumption, every barrier she's overcome to reach this moment. Mr. Blackstone, you've just illustrated exactly why Sovereign Wealth Partners could never do business with you. She turns to address the audience directly, her voice rising to fill every corner of the auditorium. This isn't about one racist man losing a business opportunity. This is about a system that assumes competence and incompetence based on skin color rather than credentials. Maya clicks to a new slide, showing Richard's own company statistics. Blackstone Empire employs 847 people across 15 projects. Of your 47 senior management positions, 46 are held by white men. Your company operates in a city where 40% of the population is non-white, yet your workforce is 91% white. The numbers hang in the air like an indictment. Maya continues, her voice gaining power with each word. But here's what troubles me most, Mr. Blackstone. In the past week, you've used your influence to try to destroy my career, blacklist me from my industry, and even attempted to use my grandmother's medical bills as leverage to force me into public humiliation. Richard's face goes white. He hadn't expected Maya to know about the hospital scheme. Maya produces a folder from her briefcase. I have copies of every phone call you made, Every email you sent, every pressure you applied to ensure that Maya Johnson would never work in finance again. All because a black woman had the audacity to extend her hand to you in a professional setting. She holds up a recording device. Would you like to hear your conversation with Jerry Morrison about teaching that uppity girl her place? Or perhaps your discussion with Mark Griffin about people like her who don't know their boundaries? Richard lunges forward, desperation making him reckless. You can't record private conversations. That's illegal. In New York State, Mr. Blackstone, only one party to a conversation needs to consent to recording. Your friend Jerry Morrison has been very cooperative with our legal team. Maria Santos, the legal counsel, steps forward with a briefcase full of documents. We also have signed statements from 12 employees at various companies describing the pressure you applied to ensure Miss Pressure Johnson's unemployment. The crowd is no longer just watching. They're witnessing history. Thomas Wright, the civil rights attorney, stands and begins a slow clap that spreads throughout the auditorium. Richard looks around desperately, seeking even one ally, but finds only faces ranging from disappointment to disgust. Maya walks to the center of the stage, looking out at the sea of faces before returning her gaze to Richard. When she speaks, her voice carries the authority of someone who has earned the right to command attention. Mr. Blackstone, I want you to understand something. I could destroy you financially. I could ensure that no legitimate investor ever works with you again. I could use my resources to make certain you spend the rest of your career answering for every discriminatory practice your company has ever engaged in. Richard shrinks back, expecting the killing blow. But I won't, Maya continues, her voice softening slightly. Because the goal isn't revenge. The goal is change. The goal is building a world where no one else has to choose between their dignity and their livelihood. She turns back to the audience. Sovereign Wealth Partners will be investing $4 billion in urban development projects in this region. But we'll be working with partners who understand that true strength comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. Maya looks directly at Richard one final time. Mr. Blackstone, you said you don't shake hands with staff. Today, you've learned that you can't afford not to shake hands with everyone, because you never know who might be holding the keys to your future. The applause is thunderous, sustained, and transformative. As Richard Blackstone stands alone on his own stage, Maya Johnson walks toward the exit, surrounded by supporters who understand they've just witnessed something remarkable. The revolution isn't always loud. Sometimes it's as quiet as a handshake refused, and as powerful as the truth finally spoken. 6 months later, Maya sits in the same hospital room where her grandmother fought for life, but the atmosphere has transformed completely. Sarah Johnson, now recovered and vibrant, holds court from her wheelchair as a steady stream of visitors seeks her wisdom. The notebook that once held secrets now contains plans for the Maya Sarah Johnson Community Development Initiative, named for both grandmother and granddaughter. Tell me again about the schools, Sarah says, her eyes bright with the joy of someone who has lived to see justice bloom. Maya spreads architectural plans across the hospital table, pointing to designs for 50 new educational facilities that will serve communities historically ignored by developers like Richard Blackstone. Each school will have state-of-the-art science labs, computer centers, and libraries, Maya explains, her voice carrying the quiet satisfaction of dreams becoming reality. But more importantly, they'll have teachers who look like the students, curricula that celebrate diversity, and partnerships with local businesses committed to hiring from their own communities. The $4 billion that Richard Blackstone lost has become a force for transformation throughout the region. Where Richard envisioned luxury towers for the wealthy, Maya and Sovereign Wealth Partners are creating mixed-income housing that serves working families. Where Richard planned exclusive shopping centers, Maya is funding community health clinics, childcare centers, and small business incubators. David Chen, who witnessed the original confrontation at the Meridian Grand, has become Maya's closest partner in the initiative. His venture capital firm, Chen Ventures, now dedicates 30% of its portfolio to companies founded by women and minorities. Maya showed me something I'd forgotten, he tells reporters who ask about his company's new direction. True wealth isn't about accumulating money. It's about creating opportunities for others to build their own wealth. Ana Rodriguez won a Pulitzer Prize for her investigative series on systemic discrimination in corporate America, sparked by her coverage of the Blackstone confrontation. Her articles led to federal investigations of hiring practices at dozens of major companies, resulting in policy changes that have opened doors for thousands of qualified candidates previously overlooked due to racial bias. Thomas Wright expanded his legal practice to focus exclusively on employment discrimination cases, using the publicity from Maya's story to attract clients who previously felt powerless against corporate retaliation. His success rate exceeds 90%, and his cases have established legal precedents that make it harder for companies to engage in the kind of systematic exclusion that Richard Blackstone practiced. Even Mark Griffin, Maya's former boss who fired her under pressure from Richard, has undergone a transformation. He publicly apologized for his cowardice, donated his personal savings to Maya's initiative, and restructured his consulting firm to ensure that advancement depends on merit rather than the comfort level of prejudiced clients. Maya taught me that neutrality in the face of injustice is just another form of complicity, he admits during a company-wide diversity training session. As for Richard Blackstone himself, his story serves as a cautionary tale rather than a tragedy. Blackstone Empire filed for bankruptcy 4 months after the confrontation, unable to secure financing as investors fled his toxic brand. Richard lost his penthouse, his yacht, and his social standing, but he gained something unexpected: perspective. Now working as a mid-level insurance adjuster, Richard encounters the kinds of people he once dismissed daily. The single mothers fighting for fair settlements, the elderly homeowners navigating bureaucracy, the immigrants struggling with language barriers, all the staff he once refused to acknowledge as human beings. The work is humbling, necessary, and slowly teaching him lessons that wealth and privilege never could. Maya doesn't gloat over Richard's downfall. When reporters ask about her former adversary, she simply says, "I hope he learns from this experience and becomes a better person." Everyone deserves a chance at redemption if they're willing to do the work. The Maya Sarah Johnson Community Development Initiative has become a model for responsible investment nationwide. Universities study their approach, governments consult their methodologies, and other investment firms attempt to replicate their success. But Maya insists that the real measure of success isn't in the headlines or awards. It's in the individual lives transformed by opportunity. On weekends, Maya teaches financial literacy classes at the community center built with sovereign wealth funding. Her students range from teenagers learning to budget their first paychecks to grandparents understanding reverse mortgages. She remembers each name, celebrates each small victory, and reminds them that wealth isn't just about accumulation, it's about circulation. Money is like water, she tells her classes, echoing wisdom her grandmother taught her decades ago. When it flows freely, it nourishes everything it touches. When it's hoarded in reservoirs, everything around it withers and dies. Sarah, now serving as the initiative's senior community advisor, loves to tell visitors about the moment she knew Maya was ready to step into her power. It wasn't when she stood up to that man on stage, Sarah explains with a smile. It was when she came home afterwards and asked what we should do with all that money to help folks who look like us and dream like us. The notebook that once held secrets now contains thank you letters from scholarship recipients, business plans from successful entrepreneurs, and photos of families moving into affordable homes built through Maya's initiative. Each page represents a life changed, a barrier broken, a future made possible. Maya's story spreads through social media, inspiring others to stand up against discrimination in their own workplaces and communities. The hashtag number Handshake of Justice becomes a rallying cry for people sharing their own experiences of being underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed because of their race, gender, or background. But Maya's favorite responses come from the children. Letters arrive weekly from young people who see themselves in her story. Kids who are told they don't belong in advanced classes. teenagers who are assumed to be troublemakers because of their zip codes, college students who are questioned about their qualifications despite their achievements. Miss Maya, one letter begins, "My teacher said I should write to you because I want to be an investor like you someday. She said you showed everybody that it doesn't matter what color you are if you work hard and stay smart." Is that really true? Maya keeps these letters in a special folder, answering each one personally. Her responses always end the same way. Yes, it's really true. But more importantly, you have the power to make it true for the next person who comes after you. The transformation extends beyond individual success stories. The broader financial industry, shaken by the publicity surrounding Maya's revelation, has begun implementing meaningful diversity initiatives. Investment firms actively recruit from historically black colleges and universities. Mentorship programs pair experienced professionals with promising newcomers from underrepresented backgrounds, and promotion criteria are being re-examined to eliminate unconscious bias. Maya's influence reaches the highest levels of government and finance. She's invited to speak at the World Economic Forum, consults with Federal Reserve officials on inclusive banking policies, and serves on advisory boards that shape international development strategies. Yet, she never moves from her modest apartment, never stops taking the bus to work, never forgets the woman she was before the world knew her name. Power, she tells a group of MBA students during a guest lecture at her alma mater, isn't about commanding respect through fear or wealth. True power is about creating conditions where everyone can command respect through their own merit and dignity. The lecture hall is packed beyond capacity, with students sitting in aisles and standing along the walls. Maya's story has become required reading in business ethics courses nationwide, but hearing her tell it in person carries additional weight. "I spent 3 years pretending to be ordinary," she continues. "But I learned something important during that time. There are no ordinary people. There are only people whose extraordinary qualities haven't been recognized yet. Every person you meet, the security guard, the cleaning staff, the intern, the customer service representative, every single person has something valuable to offer if you're wise enough to see it." A student raises her hand. "Miss Johnson, what would you say to someone who's facing discrimination in their workplace right now? Someone who doesn't have your resources or connections?" Maya's answer comes without hesitation. "Document everything. Build your network before you need it. Stay excellent at your craft so that when opportunity comes, you're ready to seize it. And remember, your dignity is not negotiable. Never let anyone convince you to accept less respect than you deserve." Another student follows up. "But what if standing up for yourself costs you your job? Then it wasn't the right job for you anyway," Maya replies. "I know that's easy for me to say now, but I lived it. I lost my job, my industry connections, almost lost my grandmother's medical care. It was terrifying. But compromising your integrity for security is like selling your soul for monopoly money. It feels valuable until you try to spend it." The applause is sustained and heartfelt. These students understand they're not just hearing a success story. They're receiving a blueprint for ethical leadership in an industry that desperately needs it. As the semester progresses, Maya continues teaching her community classes, managing her investment portfolio, and expanding the development initiative. But she also begins working on something new, a book tentatively titled The Handshake Principle: Building Wealth While Building Character. "Every interaction is a transaction," she writes in the introduction. "Not a financial transaction, but a moral one. In every handshake, every conversation, every moment of choosing how to treat another human being, we're either depositing kindness into the world or withdrawing dignity from it. The question isn't whether you can afford to treat people with respect. It's whether you can afford not to." Sarah reads each chapter as Maya completes it, offering the kind of feedback that only comes from a lifetime of watching dreams deferred and dignity defended. "Baby," she says after reading the conclusion, "your grandfather would be so proud. You didn't just change your own life. You changed the conversation." The book becomes a bestseller before it's even published, with pre-orders exceeding 500,000 copies. Publishers call it the most important business book of the decade, but Maya insists it's not really about business at all. It's about remembering that behind every transaction, every negotiation, every boardroom decision, there are human beings whose lives will be affected by our choices, she explains during her book tour. We have a responsibility to use our power wisely, and that starts with recognizing the humanity in everyone we encounter. On the first anniversary of the Meridian Grand Confrontation, Maya organizes a symposium called Future Leaders, Building Inclusive Economies. The event brings together investors, entrepreneurs, and community leaders from around the world to share strategies for creating economic opportunities that benefit everyone, not just the already privileged. Richard Blackstone is not invited, but he watches the live stream from his small apartment, taking notes on inclusive hiring practices that might help him in his new career. It's a small sign of growth, but growth nonetheless. The symposium's keynote address draws a global audience of over 2 million viewers. Maya takes the stage, wearing the same simple black blazer she wore to Richard's presentation a year ago. But now it represents something entirely different. Not someone trying to fit in, but someone comfortable with standing out. A year ago, a man told me he didn't shake hands with staff, Maya begins, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the auditorium and every corner of the world through the streaming cameras. Today, I want to talk about what happens when we refuse to be diminished by other people's limitations. She pauses, looking out at faces representing every continent, every race, every background imaginable. The kind of diverse gathering that Richard Blackstone's prejudice would have made impossible. The handshake I was denied became the handshake that changed everything. Not because I was special, but because I was prepared. Not because I was lucky, but because I was ready. And not because I was perfect, but because I was persistent. The audience leans forward, understanding they're witnessing history in real time. Each of you has the power to be someone's opportunity. Each of you can choose to be the person who sees potential instead of prejudice, who opens doors instead of closing them, who builds bridges instead of walls. Maya reaches into her jacket pocket and withdraws the same black card she placed on Richard's table a year ago. But instead of setting it down, she extends it toward the audience. This card represents access to resources that can change lives and transform communities. But the real power isn't in the card. It's in the choice to use those resources responsibly. She puts the card away and extends her empty hand instead. The most powerful tool any of us possesses isn't money or connections or credentials. It's the simple act of treating every person we meet with dignity and respect. That handshake, the one that recognizes the worth of every human being, that's what changes the world. The standing ovation lasts 7 minutes. But Maya's real reward comes later, during the reception, when a young black woman approaches her nervously. "Miss Johnson, I'm a first-year investment banking analyst, and I just wanted to thank you. Last week, a senior partner at my firm made a comment about my hair being unprofessional. Instead of staying quiet like I usually do, I spoke up. I told him that his comment was inappropriate and asked him to explain what he meant by unprofessional." Maya smiles, remembering her own moments of finding her voice. How did he respond? He apologized immediately and asked if I would help the firm develop better guidelines for professional appearance that don't discriminate against natural hair textures. It was like watching someone wake up in real time. "And how did you feel?" The young woman's smile lights up her entire face. "Like I was finally taking up the space I deserve. Like I was remembering that my dignity isn't negotiable." Maya extends her hand for a firm handshake. "Welcome to the revolution. It's been waiting for you." As the evening winds down and guests begin to leave, Maya finds herself alone on the hotel balcony, looking out at the city lights. Sarah joins her, moving slowly but steadily with her walking cane. "Tired, baby girl?" "No, Grandma." "Energized. There's so much work still to do." Sarah settles into a chair beside her granddaughter. "Your grandfather used to say that change happens one handshake at a time, one conversation at a time, one person deciding to be better than they were yesterday. Do you think we're making a difference?" Sarah's laugh carries the wisdom of someone who has seen progress measured in decades rather than days. Baby, a year ago, you were unemployed and I was dying. Tonight, you addressed 2 million people from around the world, and I'm here to see it. If that's not making a difference, I don't know what is. Maya reaches over to squeeze her grandmother's hand. What would you tell someone who's about to face their own Richard Blackstone moment? I'd tell them what I'm telling you right now, Sarah replies, her voice strong despite her age. Stand tall. Speak truth. Remember that your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. And when it's time to extend your hand in greeting, do it with confidence, because you belong wherever your feet can take you. The city spreads out below them, millions of people living their lives, facing their own challenges, looking for their own opportunities to stand up and be counted. Maya knows that somewhere in those lights, there are others preparing for their moment, others finding their courage, others learning that dignity is not negotiable. The revolution continues, Maya whispers to the night air. One handshake at a time, Sarah agrees. And in apartments and offices and conference rooms across the world, people who heard Maya's story are preparing for their own moments of truth, their own opportunities to choose dignity over comfort, justice over convenience, courage over compliance. The handshake that Richard Blackstone refused has become a symbol recognized around the world, not of division, but of the simple, revolutionary act of treating every human being with the respect they deserve. The story isn't over. It's just beginning. Because when enough people decide to stand up, when enough hands extend in greeting rather than pull back in prejudice, when enough voices speak truth instead of staying silent, that's when everything changes. That's when we all win. Your turn. Which side will you choose?